This is a new ministry which is just starting. Reverend Hood needs your help in sharing the good news of Jesus Christ and His power throughout the world. If you would be so kind as to send a donation to Nicholas Hood III Ministries of any amount, Reverend Hood will send you a free complimentary copy of his book of original personal prayers and beautiful photographs entitled The Test, The Strength, The Endurance, and The Way Out.
And the point that I'm making is that in everybody's life, at some point, there's a plan B. God is talking to us every step of the way. God is trying to show you something every step of the way. When things seem to be going wrong, that's God's way of opening another door. I am convinced that God has been directing me every step of my life.
On the Word Network.
The Apostle Paul talks about in the book of Philippians, 4th chapter, the 14th verse, "It was kind of you to share in my distress." It was kind of you to share in my distress. Paul is in prison. The people at Philippi have written him a letter. They've sent him a gift. And Paul is writing them back in what we now know of as the letter to the Philippians. And near the end, in the 4th chapter, he says, "It was kind of you to share in my distress." I want to break that down. Paul loved the church at Philippi. And he loved the church for many reasons. He loved the people. The church at Philippi is the first church that Paul developed in Asia Minor. Paul went on to bigger things, bigger churches. He created churches all over the diaspora. But wherever Paul went, the church at Philippi was his heart. And it was his heart because it was his first church. And you know, in life, there's nothing like your first anything. Your first car, your first donut, your first hamburger, your first Coney Island, your first kiss, your first trombone, whatever it is, the first football team you play on, first baseball. The first is important. And Paul is now at the pinnacle of his career. He's near death. He's in Rome. He's waiting for trial before Caesar. And he's writing back to the church at Philippi, and he says these simple words: "It was kind of you to share in my distress." And so let me break that down. Paul loves the church at Philippi. And you know, love is a funny thing. If you love somebody, the real test of love, one of those tests, is sharing. You don't really have love until you learn how to share. You don't have love until you found somebody that you can talk to, somebody you are willing to listen to, somebody you are willing to share time with. All that is part of love. And, you know, some people go through the motions of love, which is why love can be tricky. Love can be tricky because on a physical standpoint, physical level, people who love people and people who don't love people can hold hands. You can hold hands. You can hug a person that you don't love. You can kiss a person that you don't really love. You can go to the movies with somebody you don't really love. But when you found somebody who you really click with, where the love is right, you'll find that they're sharing. And it's interesting that Paul uses that word, share, in Philippians chapter 4, verse 14. He says, "It was kind of you to share in my distress." And think about what Paul is saying here. He's saying, you, the church at Philippi, are sharing what I am going through. And, you know, when we share in love, we share everything. We share our time. We share our good things. We may share our money. But we also sometimes If you really love somebody, you will share in their sorrow. You will share in their distress. And in every life, there is a degree of distress. There's a degree of sorrow. When somebody you love dies, you are sorrowful. When you lose a job, you get fired from a job, there's a degree of sorrow. And the people who really love you are the people who will feel your pain, the people who will embrace you in your shame. Life has some tough moments. When your child goes to prison, who is it who's going to embrace you and call you and let you know, I'm with you. I can't make it better, but I am with you. When you get the diagnosis of cancer in your life, how many of your friends will be with you and not necessarily say anything, but they let you know that they are on your side? One of the things I've learned in marriage, these 40, soon to be 49 years, my wife taught me early on. She said, Dick, you're a typical man. I said, what do you mean I'm a typical man? She said, men like to fix things, and men look for solutions. She said, by the same token, often women are not, when things go wrong, women don't necessarily seek a solution right away. She said, women are good problem solvers too. But she says, sometimes a woman doesn't want to answer. All she wants to know is, are you with me? Do you feel my pain? Do you understand my shame and my sorrow? In other words, learn when to keep your mouth shut. And she said, even in keeping your mouth shut, if you are with me, you make me feel better. And I have learned that pastorally through the years. I'm a pastor of a church. One of the things I've learned is that when people die, the most important thing you can do is show up. When people go to prison, one of the most important things you can do is let them know, I'm with you. And it's sometimes embarrassing. I've gone to court with people who've done bad things. I've been in situations where people who've been wronged by somebody who's a member of my church will ask me, why are you here in court today? And I said, that guy is a member of my church. And, I've had people look at me and say, why in the world would you do that? And I say, man, all I'm doing is I'm trying to exhibit and exert the love of Jesus Christ. And sometimes the best thing I can do is simply show up. I am sharing in somebody's distress. And speaking of distress, when Paul uses that word, you have shared in my distress. What Paul is saying is that I'm not ashamed to admit that I'm stressed out. But some people think that shame and pain and sorrow is something you don't want to talk about. There's some of us who feel like when things go wrong in life, we don't want other people to know. We don't want other people to know that we have a cancer. We don't want other people to know that we've lost our job. We don't want other people to know that maybe we're suffering from arthritis in the fingers or the legs. We don't want people to know that our children have made some mistake with money, mistake with their job. We don't want other people to know that we've lost a job. And what Paul is saying is he is admitting that there are things in his life that he doesn't feel good about. He says, it was kind of you to share in my distress. And one of the messages that I want to share today with you is, do not be ashamed of your sorrow. Do not be ashamed of the things that are not right in your life. And if you can't figure things out, that is nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to hold your head in shame in realizing that I would really like to have a counselor. I'd really like to talk to a psychologist. I'd like to talk to somebody who could help me to think through my problems. And, everybody needs help. Many years ago, when my eldest son was in about the 10th or 11th grade, we took in a girl who was in the 11th grade. And she had run away from home, but she's a nice girl. We knew her from her youth when she was about 2 years of age. Her mother was a good friend of ours. And when I found out that she had run away to Detroit, I said, look, if you're going to run away from home, run away to someplace substantial. And I said, come on with us. And my wife and I talked about it. We took the girl in, and we had a marvelous experience. And now that she's in her 40s, she's like a second daughter. She's like a daughter to us. And it had a happy ending. But in the process, at some point, she indicated to us that she would like to talk to a psychologist. And so we said, okay, we found a psychologist. She went to talk to the psychologist, but then the psychologist called us. And when the psychologist called us, the psychologist said, I want to talk to you and your wife. And I said, why do you want to talk to me and my wife? I said, we're not the ones who are stressed out. And she said, but you are her parents. And I said, ma'am, we're not her parents. We're more like the guardians. I said, but if you insist on us talking with you, I'll be happy to do it. And so we set up a time to talk. And for me, thinking back on that time, talking to the psychologist, it was one of the most pleasant experiences I've ever had in my life, because I realized that as a pastor of a church, I spent a lot of time counseling other people. But during that 1 hour, when the psychologist asked me to process what I was feeling about this young girl living in our house, it dawned on me. I said, for once in my life, I'm talking for almost the better part of an hour. And I said, I'm not complaining about the girl. I'm happy for the girl. I said, but I'm getting an opportunity to let things off my chest. And it was one of the most refreshing hours I can think of in my life. And the reason why I'm saying that today is there's no harm in talking to a psychologist. There's no harm in talking to somebody who wants you to process your feelings. And so when the Apostle Paul says, it was kind of you to share in my distress, Paul is saying, I appreciate that. I appreciate your kindness. And so I want to be an encouragement to you today. And my encouragement to you is, if you can perceive that a friend or somebody you know is struggling, suffering, and suffering under the weight of some problem that they can't figure out, one of the best things you can do is simply talk to them. Talk to them and encourage them. And in the process of doing that, you will be doing what the Apostle Paul is saying right now. He's saying, it was kind of you to share in my distress. So I want you to think about that. And we're going to take a station break. And when we come back, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what does it mean to share in somebody else's distress. Thank you so much for tuning in. And we'll be right back. God bless.
America used to be considered a godly country. It doesn't seem to be that way to me now. And I don't mean to be disrespectful or anything, but it's so many things they're okaying for the wrong reasons. There's not godly reason. People need to really open up the Bible, the Bible, and look in it and really get it into their heart. And this, the way Reverend Hood is doing this is a comfortable way. It's not forcing anything on people. It's a comfortable way and a loving way for it to continue to move in that direction.
the way Reverend Hood presents it. You can understand it, and it makes you want to delve into the Bible even more so that you can see more, because it seems like the program goes off too fast. We need the bread of life.
We really do.
These days, we need it more than ever. And Reverend Hood's ministry on TV is giving us our bread.
And the point that I'm making is that in everybody's life, at some point, there's a plan B. God is talking to us every step of the way. God is trying to show you something every step of the way. When things seem to be going wrong, that's God's way of opening another door. I am convinced that God has been directing me every step of my life.
On the Word Network.
Today I'm talking about the Apostle Paul telling the church at Philippi, it was kind of you to share in my distress. That's from chapter 1. It was kind of you to share in my distress. I want to talk a little bit more about that. Part of what he really means when he's saying it was kind of you to share in my distress is Paul is saying the people of Philippi were empathizing with him. And in love, in a loving relationship, we have to learn to have empathy. And what does empathy mean? It's not necessarily sympathy, but when we sympathize with people when they've experienced death, we extend our sympathy. But to have empathy for a person is to try to feel what they're going through, to understand the person. It's not your life, it's somebody else's life, but you're trying to get into their mind and to understand that if a person is hurting, you're sharing with them. If they're happy, you're happy for them. And I think about this. When I was in school, there was a professor in divinity school named Henry Nouwen, Nouwen. He's from Canada. He was a mystic. But while I was there at the Yale Divinity School, he wrote a book called The Wounded Healer. And I was fascinated by his book because one of the points that Henry Nouwen makes is that if you love another person and if you extend yourself for a person who is healing, if you become a caregiver for somebody else, if you just love somebody else, they mean something to you at all. When they experience death, you feel something. Maybe not the same that they do, but you're hurting. If a person is experiencing joy, you experience their joy. And the point that he's making is that you can't really heal somebody else until you become wounded yourself. That's, to me, a very powerful concept. I'm not healing you from a distance, but I can't really heal you until I put my finger in the wound, until your blood becomes my blood, until your pulse becomes my pulse. I am feeling you. I thought about that Saturday. I officiated a funeral for a young man, and his wife of 30 years. When I walked in, I got there a little late for the family hour, but when I walked into the church, I was looking for her, and I didn't see her seated where the widow and the family would normally seat, which is the first pew on the right side in my sanctuary. And then I looked closer to the casket, and I realized that the wife, an hour before the funeral, was standing beside the casket. And it was very unusual to me because usually when a person is grieving, they're sitting down there in the church. But this woman was standing next to the casket. And I think she kind of threw some of the visitors off, the well-wishers, because, you know, we're accustomed to going into a funeral. We see a person, the widow or the widower, seated on the front pew. We go by, we shake their hands, and we walk through. But in this case, the widow was standing, and almost as if to say, here I am. You know, I've done the best that I could do as a wife. I've done the best that I could do as a mother. I've done the best that I could do as a human being. And I've built a life with this man for 30 years, and now he's gone. And she was just standing there. And I went up to her, and I don't remember what I said, but I tried to let her know that I'm with you. And we went through that. And then the service started, and then they didn't close the casket right away, but the casket was closed a little early in the service, but later in the service, you know, after it had begun. I think we had the scripture, and then they were getting ready for the prayer. And after the scripture, the funeral director came forward. He invited the family, along with the wife, who now had been seated with her family, but got up with them. And as the funeral director let them have a final viewing of the deceased, and they were lowering the top of the casket, the poor widow collapsed, and they had to pick her up. And all I could think of was, I said, man, my heart goes out to that woman. I said, because she's leaving it all on the field right here. And all I could do was empathize with her. All I could do is think, I said, this lady spent 30 years with this man. They've raised 3 children together. They've gone, you know, they've built a nice house, a nice life together, and now all of that is over. And all I could do was just empathize with that lady. And the point that I'm making with the Apostle Paul in his letter to the church at Philippi is Paul is saying, it was kind of you to share in my distress. And no matter who we are, no matter how strong you are, there will come a point in life when there is distress. Not just stress, but distress. Stress on a level that you can hardly bear. And when you get to that moment, that's the moment when you will find who your real friends are. Your true friends are the ones who are with you not only when you're in the money, but when you're out of money. Your true friends are with you when you're doing well. Your true friends are there when you're not doing well. The true friends are there when you're nobody, but they are also there when you're somebody. And that's the kind of person I try to be. I'm trying in my life to strive to be the best human being that I can be. And what I've learned in life is that if I'm going to be the best human being that I can be, I've got to be 100% for 100% of the people. It means that I've got to be loving and kind every day of my life. I cannot afford to have a day when I decide, well, I'm a little busy today, and I'm too busy to pick up the telephone. I'm too busy to let somebody else know that I'm caring, that I'm thinking for them. And I just pray that the Lord will help me to understand how to be a better friend, that the Lord will help me to be a better person, that the Lord will help me to be a better Christian. And I am encouraging you right now in your daily prayer to pray, Lord, help me to be the best person. Lord, help me to be more loving. Lord, help me to be kind. Help me, like Henry Nouwen would say, to be a wounded healer. Help me, O Lord God, to heal, not just from a distance, but to get in personal into somebody else's life. And help me to do what you would have me to do. But you know, as much as I try with my life to be a wounded healer, as much as I try in my life to become one with the people that I care for, there's one who loves us even greater than you or I could ever love. And the one who really has learned how to share and has shown us how to share in distress and to share in joy is Jesus Christ. Because what we see in Jesus Christ, my friends, is one who, though he was made in the image of God, he did not wear this on his slave, but he emptied himself and he became humble and sacrificed so that you and I might be free from our sins and have life everlasting in that kingdom which has no end. That to me, my friends, is the greatest example of a wounded healer. In my life, I'm on the King's Highway and I'm moving up right now. In my own way, I'm trying to do the best that I can because I know that one day it's all going to be over. And on that day, when it's all over, I want the Lord to look down at me and say, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a few things. Now enter into the joy of thy salvation." You, in your life, tried to become one. You tried to share with somebody in their joy, to share with somebody in their discomfort. Now be free from your labor and rest in that kingdom which has no end. My friends, that's the good news in Jesus Christ. If this program means anything to you at all, if you like this worship service, I want you to think about supporting it. Look at the address on the screen, 4535 Chrysler Drive. Send a donation of any amount. I would appreciate your support, but I'm going to tell you something. I appreciate the fact that you just taking the time to watch this program today. Call a friend, tell them every Saturday at 2:30 p.m. on this channel, the Word Network, they can check it out. God bless, God keep you, and remember, I'm praying for you.
You know why I really love Nick Hood as a minister? I watched his father do it, and he took over for the church, and he was one of us, but he really turned out to be a great minister. I know it's hard, and that's something that I know that all ministers may not be doing what they're doing because for the right reasons. But I know it's hard. I know he's a beautiful man, and we've been knowing each other for over 50 years. I believe in him. He's inspired me in so many ways to do what I'm doing and try to be the best at it. Make sure you watch Nick Hood's ministries. You'll never be the same.
And the point that I'm making is that in everybody's life, at some point, there's a plan B. God is talking to us every step of the way. God is trying to show you something every step of the way. When things seem to be going wrong, that's God's way of opening another door. I am convinced that God has been directing me every step of my life.
On the Word Network.